My name is Ethan, and this happened during my second year of college. After missing out on a dorm after my freshman year, I had to scramble for a place to live off campus. I ended up in a co-op, part of a small community of 3 houses somewhat close to campus. It wasn't perfect, but it was affordable, and I didn't have many choices. I had a bike, so the commute wasn't a big deal. Most of the residents were students like me, with a few exceptions, some alumni, a couple of teaching assistants, and a few older folks pursuing degrees later in life. One person, though, caught my attention right away. An older woman living in one of the other houses. She seemed to be in her late 50s, though her weathered appearance made her look older. She had graying hair and moved with a slight hunch, maybe from an old injury. She kept to herself, her face always expressionless. I figured she had some university connection, maybe a former professor or alumna, but no one clarified, and I didn't ask. The first odd thing I noticed was in our shared kitchen. It was strange enough that she was there, since the other houses had their own kitchens. She wasn't cooking or chatting. She just stood there staring blankly while we students bustled around, preparing meals and playing music. She didn't join in, just watched. A few times our eyes met, and I got the uneasy feeling she was focusing on me, though I told myself that was ridiculous. No one else seemed to notice her, which felt off. A few days later, I was studying in my room when I glanced out my window and saw her again. She was standing in the middle of the street, not on the sidewalk, staring up at my window. It was late, chilly, and she must have been freezing. I couldn't tell if she was looking at me or the house in general, but it felt personal. On impulse, I waved, trying to be polite. I regretted it instantly. She didn't wave back. Instead, she hopped up and down excitedly, then bolted toward her house. My stomach churned. I just confirmed she was watching me, and now she knew my room's location. That night, I asked a housemate about her. He said she'd always been around and advised me to ignore her just like everyone else did. He didn't know much else, only passing on what he'd been told when he moved in. Unsatisfied, I dug deeper. A senior in her house said she was tied to the university and a bit eccentric but not dangerous. When I asked why no one found her behavior odd, he shrugged and said the property manager decided who lived there, and they had no say. I tried to push her out of my mind, but things escalated. One night, I stepped out of my room and nearly collided with her. She was standing right outside my door. It was past midnight on a quiet weekday, and the house was silent. She didn't react to my presence, just turned and walked away, like I was the one intruding. This wasn't the only incident. I kept catching her in places she shouldn't be, doing things that made no sense. Then I lost my room key. The co-op's houses were once part of a hotel, so each room had its own lock and key. Most people left their doors unlocked, but I always locked mine for peace of mind. Losing my key was a hassle. I had a spare, but replacing it was an expense I didn't need. A few nights later, I woke up to a faint noise. Every 20 seconds or so, there was a soft thud from my closet, like something shifting inside. I'm not easily spooked, and I wasn't about to wait around. Heart pounding, I crept to the closet, took a deep breath, and yanked the door open, yelling to startle whoever was there. Sure enough, it was her. She was standing in my closet. One of my belts looped around her neck, her eyes wide. In her hand was a kitchen knife. My shout must have startled her because she lunged at me, knife raised. I screamed again, this time out of pure terror, and tackled her. She was frail, so I disarmed her quickly, but she fought wildly, biting and clawing as I pinned her down. I shouted for help, and soon my housemate Jake rushed in, helping me restrain her while someone called the police. The police arrived fast and arrested her. She'd gone silent by then, refusing to speak, which was chilling. They found my missing key on her. Weeks later, we learned the truth. She was the property manager's sister, secretly allowed to live there despite severe mental health issues. Instead of getting her help, he'd stashed her in an empty room. The property manager faced charges for negligence and other violations, and he deserved it. I blame him more than her. I pity her. but that doesn't erase the fact that she tried to kill me. I'll never know why she fixated on me, but I hope I never experience anything like that again. I'm graduating soon, and while I'll miss college, that night will always haunt my memories. I'm Margaret, and my husband Robert and I have lived in our cozy 2-story home for nearly 20 years. Our kids are grown and out on their own, and we're proud of them. This story happened last year. A new neighbor moved into the house across the street, which was a relief since I was tired of staring at an empty property. I'm retired, so I spend a lot of time on my porch, knitting, reading, or listening to true crime podcasts or music with Robert. The new neighbor was a young man, probably in his mid-20s, named Lucas. He drove a sleek sports car and wore flashy clothes, suggesting he was either wealthy or acting like it. Lucas was charming, though. He introduced himself after a few days, and he and Robert hit it off, bonding over sports and swapping old college stories. Lucas said he worked in media, freelancing for some online influencer, which went over my head but seemed profitable. He talked investments with Robert, and he came across as a bright, likable guy. For a few months, everything was normal. Lucas would wave to me from his driveway, and I'd wave back. Then I started noticing a young woman visiting his house regularly. She drove a white convertible, was blonde, and dressed in a way I found a bit bold. I assumed she was his girlfriend, maybe checking on his place when he was out since she had a key. She'd show up once or twice a week, stay briefly, and leave. One evening, I saw them together, Lucas pulling into his driveway with her beside him. That confirmed my assumption, but soon after, things seemed to sour. One afternoon, while I was gardening, I heard shouting. Lucas and the woman were in his driveway arguing loudly. She was gesturing wildly, almost like she might hit him. Eventually, she stormed off, speeding away in her car. Lucas went inside, seemingly unaware of me. I figured it was a private matter and stayed out of it. But then I saw her car at his house again, multiple times when Lucas wasn't home. I mentioned it to Robert, who told me to mind my own business, and I agreed. Then one night, we woke to sirens. We rushed outside to find police cars and an ambulance at Lucas's house. Neighbors gathered, watching as the police led the woman out in handcuffs. She was calm, staring blankly ahead. Lucas was carried out on a stretcher, covered in blood. I gasped. He was gone for a week and I was worried sick. When he returned, Robert and I visited him. He invited us in and explained everything. The woman, named Sophie, had confessed to the police. She'd stolen his spare key and made a copy without his knowledge. She'd started demanding extravagant gifts, dinners, jewelry, trips. When he resisted, she became obsessive and volatile, leading to their argument. She'd been tracking his phone's location and sneaking into his house when he was out, even installing hidden cameras in his bedroom to monitor him. She'd been swapping out the camera batteries during her visits. The argument I'd witnessed was Lucas trying to end things. She refused, and they settled on a break. But the next night she showed up with a knife. Lucas fought her off, but not before she seriously injured him. Doctors said he narrowly escaped needing surgery, or worse. We tried to comfort him, but he was shaken. He mentioned learning his lesson about flashing his wealth, especially around certain people. Soon after, he moved out, saying he no longer felt safe and worried Sophie's friends might know his address. We haven't seen him since. I hope he's okay. No one should endure that, especially someone so young. I moved to a new city for a fresh start after a messy breakup with an ex, which made staying in my old town unbearable. I'd come into some money young and made poor choices about the company I kept. Lesson learned. My new neighborhood is peaceful. Low crime, quiet, mostly families. The houses are spread out, which I liked, but the mansion next door is oddly close to mine. At first, I assumed a large family lived there, but I was way off. I made a point to introduce myself to my neighbors, saving the mansion for last because my social energy was running low. Everyone else was welcoming, mostly parents with young kids, all seeming successful. I felt a bit out of place as a single guy in my late 20s. When I finally knocked on the mansion's door, a young guy with a mullet answered, looking younger than me. Caught off guard, I launched into my introduction. He grinned, interrupting to say how nice it was to meet someone his age. His name was Caleb, and he invited me for a drink sometime, joking about how most neighbors kept to themselves. I suggested grabbing a drink then and there, expecting a laugh and an invite inside. Instead, he glanced behind him nervously and said he was busy with work. When I asked what he did, he paused, gave a vague finance answer, and changed the subject. I asked if he had roommates, and he said he lived alone, which blew my mind given the house's size. We chatted a bit more, exchanged numbers, and he went inside. I was thrilled to have a neighbor my age, but his living situation seemed odd. For weeks, I tried texting Caleb to hang out, but he always said he was swamped with work. Eventually, I stopped trying, not out of anger, just disinterest. I never saw anyone at his place, no visitors, no deliveries. His car was always in the driveway, yet he never seemed to leave. I work from home and my office overlooks his property, so I couldn't help noticing. One Wednesday night, I woke at 2 a.m. to loud music. My windows were open, so the sound carried. At first, I thought it was a dream, but it was real. Peering out, I saw 7 cars in Caleb's driveway. A party, clearly. I didn't mind noise, usually, but this was loud for a weeknight. I decided to ask him to turn it down. I threw on a jacket and walked over. The music was blaring, but no one answered my knocks. I almost texted Caleb, but figured he'd brush me off. I knocked harder. Still nothing. I tried the door. It was unlocked. Inside, I saw a pile of shoes in the entryway, maybe 10 pairs. But the house was empty. No people, no drinks, nothing. The music wasn't music at all. It was a recording of people laughing and talking, like a fake party. But the cars and shoes suggested people were there. Curiosity got the better of me. I found a slightly open door leading to the basement. Something told me answers were down there. The stairs were dark, with a faint light at the bottom. I descended quietly. As I neared a partially open door, I heard a rhythmic mechanical grinding like heavy equipment. Peeking through, I saw 3 older men in work boots, goggles, and rubber gloves staring at something out of view. They didn't match the shoes upstairs. A strong chemical smell like bleach hit me and dread washed over me. I turned to leave, but the light dimmed as if the door had closed. Panicking, I sprinted upstairs, out the front door, and into my backyard, locking my side door behind me. From my dark office, I watched Caleb's house. Minutes later, 8 older men spilled out, scanning the area. Caleb wasn't among them. They argued, one shoving another before going back inside. The music stopped. I considered calling the police, but had no clear crime to report. I couldn't understand why no neighbors complained about the noise. The next morning, all the cars, including Caleb's, were gone. I walked by his house, peeking through windows. Nothing. Days turned into weeks, then months. His grass grew wild, and packages piled up at his door. I asked neighbors if they'd heard the party. None had, even after I described it. I felt like I was losing it. Caleb still hasn't returned. I think the fake party was a cover for something illegal, but the unlocked door and lack of neighbor complaints make me question everything. If Caleb comes back, I'm not sure if I'll confront him or stay quiet.